welcome to the deep dive. If you're listening to this right now, there is like a pretty high probability that you have a cup of coffee sitting somewhere near you.
Yeah, or you're probably holding it right now.
Exactly. So take a look at it. What if I told you that the very same agricultural ecosystem responsible for that morning caffeine jolt is currently holding the secret to the future of artificial intelligence?
It's wild to even think about.
It is. And we're not just talking about AI hardware, but actual literal human brain implants. I know it sounds a bit like science fiction.
Right. It sounds like someone just threw a bunch of tech buzzwords into a blender with a vanilla latte.
That's perfectly put. But the mission for our deep dive today is to explore a fascinating new report we've received. It's titled Comparation Grapheno, Traditional Grapheno 3DBioG.pdf. And it essentially proves that this intersection of coffee and quantum-level technology is very real.
And it's unfolding as we speak. I mean, it's an incredible document, and it really represents this massive paradigm shift in material science.
Yeah, so what exactly are we looking at here today?
Well, what we're going to examine today is how a really dedicated research team in Costa Rica is taking agricultural waste, literally the discarded dead branches from coffee plants, and they're transforming it into a cutting-edge nanomaterial.
It's honestly mind-blowing.
It is. And what's so compelling about this source material is that it outlines how this specific innovation has the potential to, completely rewrite the foundational rules for both modern computing and biomedical engineering.
Okay, let's unpack this. Because to understand why a coffee-based material is such a monumental deal, we first have to address the elephant in the room when it comes to material science.
Right, which is graphene.
Exactly, graphene.
Yeah.
For decades, you and I, and probably everyone listening to this, have heard graphene endlessly hyped up as the ultimate miracle material.
Oh yeah, the hype was everywhere.
We've been told it's like a couple hundred times stronger than steel. It conducts electricity beautifully. It's only a single atom thick. It was supposed to change the world.
It really was.
But here we are, years after a Nobel Prize was awarded for it, and graphene still feels like it's largely trapped inside university laboratories. Why hasn't this stuff taken over the world yet?
Well, it's trapped primarily because of the methods we've been forced to use to manufacture it. Traditional synthetic graphene has an origin story that is, at its core, a chemical trap.
A chemical trap. What do you mean by that?
So the conventional method to produce high-quality graphene relies heavily on fossil precursors, but the real bottleneck is the process itself, which is just brutally aggressive. To create it, laboratories typically use something called chemical vapor deposition.
Okay, wait, let's pause there for a second, because that sounds like some heavy jargon.
Yeah.
What does a chemical vapor deposition actually look like in practice?
Right, fair question. In simple terms, it involves baking carbon-rich gases at incredibly high extreme temperatures onto metal plates, usually copper substrates, so that the carbon atoms bond into this flat microscopic sheet.
Okay, I'm picturing that.
But to actually get the graphene off that copper plate so you can use it, you have to melt the metal away. And to do that, laboratories are forced to use highly corrosive acids and incredibly aggressive toxic chemicals.
Things like what?
Things like benzene and hydrazine.
Oh, wow. So we're trying to create this pure, magical, futuristic material, but the only way to get it is by dragging it through a highly toxic chemical soup.
That is the fundamental issue. And that toxic soup leaves behind a toxic residue on the material itself.
Which defeats the purpose of it being so pure.
Exactly. And beyond that, the process creates a massive carbon footprint and is incredibly energy intensive. So the industry is stuck in this paradox, right? A material that is universally hailed as the future of clean, highly efficient technology is currently being manufactured using highly polluting, expensive, and dangerous methods.
So it's like we're fighting against the natural order to get this stuff.
That's exactly it. It's an approach that essentially requires us to manufacture against nature using brute chemical force.
Which brings us to the radical pivot outlined in our source material today. What if, instead of trying to force nature to give us graphene through this toxic chemical battle, we figured out how to grow a material with nature's help?
And that's where the researchers in Costa Rica come in.
Right. The report introduces us to an innovator named Martín Gutiérrez Guerrero and an initiative called Nova Amazonia. They've developed this Costa Rican breakthrough dubbed 3DBioG, which stands for Biogenic 3D Graphene.
Which is a fantastic name, by the way.
It is. This operation is based in the province of Cartago, Costa Rica. And the most shocking part, to me at least, is that their precursor material is completely organic. It's coffee pruning wood.
Literally just agricultural waste.
Exactly. Specifically, they're using the biomass, the roots, and the woody branches of the coffee shrub that are normally just chopped off and discarded by farmers.
This is where the narrative makes a brilliant shift from, a chemistry problem to a biological solution. They're tapping into a resource that is already completely abundant.
But I have to push back here, because my brain is really struggling to make this jump. You're talking about taking dead dry wood from a coffee plant and turning it into an advanced nanomaterial.
I know, it sounds impossible.
Because if you apply intense heat to a piece of dry wood, you don't get a high-tech supermaterial, you get a campfire. You get regular old ash.
Yeah.
How does this Costa Rican method not just burn the wood into useless powder?
Well, that's the crucial mechanism that makes this a breakthrough. They aren't just throwing branches into an incinerator to see what happens. They are utilizing a meticulously controlled thermal purification process.
Okay, so it's not just a big oven.
No, it's essentially a form of advanced pyrolysis. This means they're baking this organic biomass at extreme temperatures in an environment that is completely devoid of oxygen.
So because there is no oxygen present, the wood literally cannot catch fire or combust.
Correct. Instead of burning, the extreme heat causes all the volatile non-carbon elements inside the wood. The moisture, the natural resins, the extraneous plant matter to basically vaporize and strip away.
Okay, that makes sense.
But the secret to why this actually works lies in a specific structural component of the coffee plant called lignin. Lignin is the rigid polymer that gives wood its strength, right? It's the cellular architecture of the plant.
Right, the stuff that makes wood wood.
Exactly. And it just so happens that the natural molecular structure of this coffee lignin naturally guards a very close structural resemblance to the atomic network of graphene.
Oh, wow. So the plant has actually already done the incredibly hard work of building the complex carbon scaffolding for us.
Exactly.
So if traditional graphene is like trying to forge a sword from scratch in a highly toxic radioactive furnace, this biogenic method is more like, I don't know, taking an existing natural honeycomb and carefully baking away the impurities until you're left with a perfect, pure, high-tech carbon filter without ever destroying its original shape.
That is a brilliant way to visualize it. It's a marvel of applied engineering. They are preserving the complex natural network of the carbon while stripping away everything else.
And no toxic soup required.
None. Because they use this oxygen-free thermal process, the entire operation is entirely free of corrosive acids. They leave behind a functional, biogenic nanomaterial that is incredibly pure.
That makes perfect sense. We aren't trying to build the skyscraper atom by atom from the ground up. We're just like clearing out the drywall and keeping the intricate steel frame that the coffee plant naturally grew for us over years of soaking up sunlight and soil.
Beautifully said.
And that physical shape, that frame we keep, leads us directly into the second major breakthrough detail in this report. Because once you grasp what this material is made of, you have to understand its physical geometry. And from what I read, the physical shape of this carbon completely changes how it processes information in a computer.
Oh, absolutely. Because the geometry of any material ultimately dictates its function. That is an inescapable law of physics and engineering, especially when we start talking about the flow of electrons.
The source material uses a really helpful analogy to explain the difference here. They point out that traditional synthetic graphene is fundamentally a flat, two-dimensional structure. It is literally a single layer of carbon atoms.
Right, just a flat sheet.
So imagine a completely flat, single-lane highway. Because it's 2D, there's only one flat route for information or electricity to travel from point A to point B.
Which is incredibly limiting.
Exactly. But 3DBioG is a three-dimensional macromolecular network. It retains the bulky, porous shape of the plant. So instead of a single-lane highway, imagine taking that road and expanding it into an entire sprawling futuristic city of overlapping, interconnected, multi-level highways.
With thousands of simultaneous routes going up, down, left, and right.
Right.
What's fascinating here is how perfectly that three-dimensional architecture aligns with the bleeding edge of modern computing, specifically when we look at artificial neural networks.
Okay, let's talk about that.
If you consider how the tech industry is trying to build artificial intelligence right now, the entire goal is to create software that mimics the human brain. The software is designed with thousands of overlapping nodes that fire simultaneously, just like our biological neurons.
But the hardware they are running that software on doesn't match, right? It's like having a brilliant software program that wants to act like a 3D brain, but it's forced to route all its signals across a flat, two-dimensional silicon grid.
Exactly the problem. It creates a massive physical bottleneck in data centers. The software is infinitely complex and multi-layered, but the physical pathway the electrons have to travel is flat and restricted.
Let me try another analogy to see if I'm tracking the why behind this. Let's say you have to cook 100 complex meals. Running an AI on a traditional 2D chip is like having one incredibly fast, brilliant chef in a standard flat kitchen.
Okay, I'm with you.
No matter how fast that chef chops and cooks, they still have to do things sequentially, moving from one station to the next. It takes a massive amount of time and energy. But this 3D biogenic graphene, it's like building a massive multi-story kitchen with thousands of chefs, all passing ingredients up, down, and across to each other at the exact same time. The meals get cooked instantly.
That perfectly captures the mechanics of parallel processing. The 3DBioG network offers vastly more physical connection points than flat 2D graphene ever could. It provides thousands of alternative vertical and horizontal paths for electrical signals to travel simultaneously.
So it's essentially acting like a brain itself.
It literally mimics the spatial way that the human brain distributes its own neural connections.
So what does this all mean for the AI industry on a practical level? Are we just talking about standard computers getting a little bit faster, or are we looking at fundamentally different types of machines?
We're looking at a fundamentally different foundation for hardware. By providing a physical architecture that inherently supports simultaneous multi-level connections, you're allowing an artificial intelligence to operate in a physical environment that actually mirrors its software.
Which changes everything.
It does.
Yeah.
When the electrons have thousands of efficient routes to choose from, you massively reduce the energy consumption of the chip, you exponentially increase its parallel processing capabilities, and you create a system that can physically handle the complex routing of a true artificial neural network without bottlenecking. It is arguably the ideal physical substrate for next-generation hardware.
Okay, here's where it gets really interesting. We've established that this 3D coffee-derived graphene serves as the perfect physical mirror for an artificial brain. But my mind immediately goes to the biological side of things.
Naturally.
Because if it is structurally so similar to the way natural neural pathways work, what happens if you take this material and implant it into an actual living human brain?
Well, this is the holy grail of neurotech right now.
Right, because we've all seen the massive headlines lately about neurotechnology. Advanced projects, like Neuralink, for example, are desperately trying to connect computer hardware directly to the human cerebral cortex to help paralyzed patients walk again, or to cure severe neurological diseases.
But they keep hitting this massive, seemingly insurmountable wall.
Exactly. Why is that?
It is considered the ultimate biomedical hurdle in neurotechnology today. The source document refers to it as the immunological brick wall. And to understand why 3DBioG represents such a monumental breakthrough here, we have to look closely at the mechanism of why traditional synthetic implants almost always fail.
And they usually do fail, right? Within a few months.
Yeah, within a matter of months after surgery. And the culprit is a biological reaction called cytotoxicity.
Which traces right back to that toxic chemical soup we talked about at the very beginning of the deep dive.
Precisely. Remember how traditional graphene is separated from its copper plate using benzene and hydrazine?
Yeah, the nasty stuff.
Yeah. Even when high-tech laboratories try their absolute hardest to clean and purify that synthetic graphene at a molecular level, microscopic, almost undetectable traces of those heavy metals and toxic solvents remain stubbornly bonded to the material.
Oh, no.
So, picture the scenario. A highly skilled neurosurgeon carefully places this traditional synthetic graphene implant into the incredibly delicate, sensitive tissue of a human brain.
The body's defense mechanisms must instantly recognize that something is wrong.
It triggers an immediate, massive chemical alarm. The human immune system deploys specialized cells called macrophages. Think of them as the microscopic bouncers or security guards of the body.
I love that. The bouncers of the brain.
Exactly. Their entire biological imperative is to patrol the tissue, detect foreign, hostile invaders, and neutralize them. The moment these macrophages detect those microscopic traces of heavy metals and toxic solvents on the implant, they go into full attack mode.
So they try to destroy it.
The body's first instinct is to try and dissolve the invader with enzymes. But of course, biological enzymes cannot dissolve synthetic carbon graphene.
So, if the security guards can't destroy the intruder, what is their backup plan? How does the immune system handle an indestructible threat in the brain?
It immediately pivots to a containment strategy. The immune system triggers a massive, localized inflammatory response and begins to aggressively build a thick, dense wall of fibrotic scar tissue completely surrounding the implant.
Literally walling it off.
It essentially buries the hardware alive. And once that computer chip is entombed inside a thick capsule of dense scar tissue, it becomes completely isolated. It is rendered totally blind and deaf.
It can't communicate with the brain anymore.
Right. It can no longer detect or read the delicate electrical signals firing from the brain's neurons. Within a few months, your billion-dollar medical implant just becomes a useless piece of scrap metal sitting dormant inside the patient's head.
That is incredibly frustrating to even think about. You have this brilliant, life-changing software and hardware, but the human body's own security system completely sabotages it.
It's the biggest roadblock in the field.
But this is where the Costa Rican biogenic approach changes the game entirely. Because the 3DBioG thermal purification process uses absolutely no acids, no aggressive solvents, and no copper plates, it is inherently clean from the moment it is created.
Exactly.
There is literally no toxic chemical residue present to set off those macrophage alarms. But the report highlights something even more fascinating. Being chemically clean isn't the true secret to its medical success.
No, it's not. The true secret, once again, comes down to the geometry.
The physical shape.
Yes, the researchers refer to it as the botanical factor. The source details how the microscopic plant-based porosity of this purified coffee lignin perfectly matches the architecture of the human extracellular matrix.
Wait, let me make sure I'm fully grasping the scale of what you're saying and that you listening are picturing this accurately. Are you saying that when a human body scans this plant-based carbon network, which used to be a discarded coffee branch, it is literally tricked into thinking it is looking at its own human tissue?
That is exactly what the clinical observations strongly suggest. It is a biological phenomenon of dimensional coincidence.
That's amazing.
When the immune cells, the macrophages, arrive at the implant site to inspect this newly introduced object in the brain, they don't find a cold, hostile, flat metal plate laced with toxins. Instead, they encounter a highly familiar, organic, porous, three-dimensional scaffold.
So it feels like home to them.
Right. The porosity and the physical structure of the biogenic graphene speak the exact same architectural language as the biological tissue surrounding it.
So it's essentially wearing the perfect natural camouflage. It passes the security check.
It passes flawlessly. And because the immune system recognizes that physical structure and crucially detects zero chemical toxins, the typical inflammatory response is actively suppressed. The body effectively calls off the attack.
That is huge.
But the mechanism goes even further than simply not attacking. According to the sources working in this field, because the implant presents as a welcoming, porous, organic-seeming scaffold, the nearby neurons and nerve endings in the brain don't retreat away from the foreign object like they usually do.
What do?
They actually grow through the carbon network.
Wait, really? That is mind-blowing. They literally weave themselves into the machine.
They do, flawlessly fusing living organic tissue with technological hardware without any chronic rejection. It is, by all definitions, an absolute medical miracle.
And the real-world implications laid out in this document are staggering to consider. The report projects that over the next 10 years, this specific application of biocompatible 3D graphene could directly benefit upwards of 50 million people worldwide.
50 million lives changed.
We are talking about finally providing a safe, permanent, non-degrading technological bridge to help restore mobility to individuals suffering from severe paralysis. We're talking about supporting deep cognitive development and, perhaps most importantly, creating a sustainable frontline technological defense to fight, map, and potentially slow down devastating degenerative diseases like Parkinson's and Alzheimer's.
It's hard to overstate how revolutionary that is.
And all of that potential is derived from the discarded dead pruning branches of a coffee plantation in Costa Rica. It honestly gives me chills to think about the elegance of that. But as with all incredible scientific breakthroughs, I think we have to bring this back down to earth for a minute.
Let's do it.
The graveyard of material science is absolutely overflowing with quote-unquote miracle materials that work perfectly in a lab but cost $1 million a gram to produce. If this is working so well, why aren't surgeons using it tomorrow? What is the physical hurdle to getting this out of the Costa Rican lab and into data centers or local hospitals without it becoming so impossibly expensive that only billionaires can afford it?
Well, if we connect this to the bigger picture, to understand the path to market, we have to look at the structural economic problem that has plagued traditional graphene from day one. Traditional synthetic graphene is incredibly difficult and prohibitively expensive to scale to mass industrial volumes.
Because it completely relies on all those niche, highly specialized lab regions we talked about earlier. The toxic stuff requires highly controlled environments.
Exactly. You can't just easily build a factory the size of a city that relies on highly volatile, dangerous, and incredibly rare chemical precursors without the financial costs and the logistical complexity immediately skyrocketing.
Right, that just doesn't scale.
The entire global supply chain for traditional graphene is artificially bottlenecked by the availability of specialized hazardous laboratory inputs.
And this is where Martín Gutiérrez Guerrero and the 3DBioG team did something truly brilliant from a business and logistical perspective. They didn't just invent a new material, they invented an entirely new supply chain.
Which is just as important.
They solved the massive scaling problem by piggybacking on an already massive, globally established agro-industrial supply chain. The coffee industry.
It's an exceptionally elegant logistical solution. Coffee is grown abundantly across the globe, and the pruning of the coffee bushes, the routine removal of the woody biomass to ensure the plants stay healthy and yield good beans, is a necessary, constant, and massive agricultural process that happens every single year.
So there's an endless supply of it.
Exactly. Previously, that wood was just a nuisance. It was waste. It had absolutely zero economic value.
But now, that exact same waste product is the foundational feedstock of a 100% circular economy. The report emphasizes this aspect beautifully. Local coffee producers will now receive fair, direct payment for agricultural pruning waste that they previously had to pay to dispose of.
It literally turns agricultural trash into high-value technological treasure.
And from an environmental standpoint, the impact is massive.
Mm-hmm.
Creating this biogenic graphene requires absolutely zero mining for heavy metals. It inherently protects local water systems because there are no toxic chemical runoff or acid spills, and the entire production process has been certified as carbon neutral.
It really forces us to redefine what the phrase advanced technology even means. In the modern era, we've been conditioned to automatically think that advanced must mean highly synthetic, highly chemical, and highly extractive.
Right, like digging stuff out of the ground and processing it in a lab.
But this Costa Rican process proves that true technological advancement can actually be biological, circular, and regenerative to the earth.
So if they have the supply chain figured out, what does the actual timeline look like for this? The report outlines a very clear and aggressive roadmap for the immediate future. Between 2026 and 2030, the primary focus of the Nova Amazoni team is on rigorous technical validation.
Right, the testing phase.
They are actively in the process of moving from small pilot plants to full, massive industrial-scale production. It's all about securing the necessary international certifications to put this into commercial hardware in human bodies.
And this is clearly not just a theoretical academic exercise. The document clearly positions this Costa Rican initiative as a direct existential challenge to the current synthetic graphene industry. By utilizing a massively abundant agricultural resource and designing their thermal purification process for massive industrial scale from day one, 3DBioG is aiming to radically, permanently reduce the cost barrier of nanomaterials.
Meaning that if they succeed in scaling this up over the next few years, it could actually make highly toxic chemical graphene completely obsolete.
Very quickly. And by dropping the price and increasing the availability so drastically, it would democratize global access to advanced materials.
It's incredible.
It vastly lowers the barrier to entry for building next-generation quantum computing hardware, and it makes life-saving biomedical devices cheaper to produce. It takes the power of the future out of a few specialized, wildly expensive chemical laboratories and places it squarely into an abundant, sustainable, and natural agricultural cycle.
It has been a truly incredible journey we've gone on today. Just think about the sheer scale of the shift we've discussed. We started by looking at a dead, discarded coffee branch lying on the ground in Cartago, Costa Rica.
Just a piece of trash, basically.
Right. And by simply changing our scientific perspective, by deciding to work with nature's existing ancient architecture rather than burning it down with acid to start from scratch, that simple branch becomes a massive, multi-level processing highway for the future of artificial intelligence.
It's like poetry.
It becomes a stealthy, biocompatible scaffold that allows living human neurons to seamlessly fuse with microchips, offering very real, tangible hope to millions of people suffering from Alzheimer's, Parkinson's, and paralysis.
It's an incredible leap forward.
It is a powerful reminder to all of us that true technological advancement doesn't always mean forcing our will upon nature with brute force. Sometimes, the greatest leaps forward we can possibly make come from quietly stepping back and learning nature's architectural language.
Absolutely. And this entire deep dive raises a deeply important question, something for you to think about the next time you take a sip of your morning coffee. If we can use the microscopic natural geometry of a simple coffee plant to successfully trick the human immune system into accepting a computer chip, what other ancient, highly advanced biological architectures are hiding out there in our forests or deep in our oceans right now, just waiting to solve our most complex technological problems?
It definitely makes you look at that cup of coffee entirely differently, doesn't it?